Welcome to a rather unusual start to another tube radio restoration series. And I say unusual because all you see here is a cabinet with no radio inside. And the reason for that is not that something has been miniaturized and hidden behind the facecloth. It's because all the video that I took of the first stage of this job got lost. So, having finished the second stage with quite a bit of work done, I went looking for the first series of videos to publish and I found I had nothing. So instead of throwing it all away, or not to the radio, but the actual opportunity to document this, I decided to beg your indulgence and just give you a little bit of a description of what I found when I first got this radio. This is a first for me in that it's a Bosch VHF64. I'll show you the actual radio in a minute, but it's a Bosch VHF64, which is a British radio, which is a change for me because I've been doing primarily German sets. And so this was an interesting challenge. There are differences. I noticed straight away that the actual cabinet looks very similar to some of the German sets I've done, mainly the Grundigs, the Telefunkens. So this thing seems to have been, or I thought it was some sort of a copy. And I read in some forums that in fact somebody actually admitted that they took some ideas for the cabinet at least and the front of the chassis from a Blaupunkt radio when these import models became very popular in the UK. So here we have it. It's in terms of condition. First of all, let's go to the cabinet and then I'll show you the radio. The woodwork is actually not too bad. Needs probably just the lacquer needs doing. It's not bad at all. There's no lateral set of speakers on here. What I do notice is that all the metalwork, all the brass is very, very tarnished. The actual set is pretty clean on the outside. Not so clean on the inside, as I'll show you in a minute. Fortunately, I did take a lot of photos before when I did the prep work. So I do have photos of what I found inside, and I will be showing you that. So the grill cloth is in perfect condition, and I think we've got the basis of a pretty good restoration here. And as I said, interesting for me in that it's a British set. Let me show you the actual radio. I'll try and show you what we could see when this thing was in the chassis, so I don't spoil what's coming next. But what we found here was the usual, when I say usual, very similar to what I'm used to in terms of the piano buttons, the keys, the control knobs, everything else. And as mentioned before, there's quite a bit of tarnishing on all the brass work. That knob is actually brown instead of brassy. So starting from the right here, we've got the tuning knob. Now the tuning knob is one tuning knob for FM and AM. In other words, the needle, which you see over here, is single. There's one needle for the AM channels and the FM. And that raises the question of how they've achieved this on the inside, but we'll see that in a minute. And it's got the separate tone control, so you've got treble over here and bass over here. This is the volume control. There's a cap missing here, the brass cap. There's a Magic Eye tube, and then you've got the pretty standard push buttons: off, gramophone, long wave, medium wave, short wave, and VHF or FM. Again, as expected, FM only goes to about 100 megahertz, perhaps a bit more depending on how far we can tune across there. The faceplate is fine, just needs cleaning. A lot of the front just needs cleaning. The knobs are in some need of cleaning as well. And other than that, there's not much else to say about this front section. The rest is actually on the inside, and I'm going to show you with basically a photo slideshow what I found when I opened up the inside. And here we have the back, the inside, with the parts that have been left behind after removing the chassis. And this is some great news. This is one hefty pair of speakers. They're in perfect condition. They're Celestians, and I think this thing is going to produce some amazing sound. And then it also has a Grundig electrostatic tweeter. So I think that the purpose of restoration of these radios for me is to get the FM up to really impeccable condition, and then use the phono input as a power amplifier really for music playing from an iPhone or an MP3 player. And I think with these speakers we can certainly expect some good stuff. They really are beefy. I did detect a problem here which so far I hadn't encountered, and that is that the wiring is very, very brittle. And I've been warned about this. This thing is really brittle. It literally cracks. The rubber cracks and actually exposes the wire inside. Now, these wires here actually come to an external speaker over here, so they're not really a problem. And I notice, again, something that I've been warned about. Some wires, like this red one, are very flexible. This black one's very flexible. Others, like this green one, are completely dry. So it seems to be the type of rubber they used. Some of it lasted and some of it didn't. Now, the connections of this section to the radio itself, to the chassis, is made through these tags that literally just screw on to the top of the output transformer. So removing them is quite easy. And then on top here was is a bracket that holds the Farad antenna, which was also something that I thought I'd need to desolder from the chassis, but ended up leaving, as you'll see a little bit further ahead. The other thing we'll notice about this is that inside, contrary to the chassis of some of the German radios, this is actually quite a boxy interior. It's very square, very simple. A lot more of a clean design. So they simplified the interior of this thing, and it's in fairly good condition. No problem there. The one thing that springs or comes to the fore straight away is the amount of dust inside this radio. A really huge amount of dust. Everything covered in a layer of dust. And fortunately, it actually protects the chassis, so we don't have much of a rust problem. But yeah, certainly dusty. Now let's have a look at some of the photos I took of the actual chassis inside when it first came out of the radio, and I'll give you an idea of what we found. Just to note, something really got hot here. That's melted wax. That looks like a capacitor that went wrong. All right, onwards. And here we have the inside of the radio, and this is just to give you an idea of what sort of condition I found it in. The amount of dust was incredible. Years and years of dust had accumulated over these components. But fortunately, dust does not do too much damage. It actually probably protected the chassis from rust, which is not very evident. There doesn't seem to be much rust at all. So I'm pretty pleased that that's something I don't have to worry about too much. There's a few spots of rust on some of the screws, but those are easy to sort out. The other thing we notice here is we've got all the tubes in place, fairly standard setup. It's the usual ECC85 for the FM, and ECH81, which is a mixer. They've got two EF89s as IF amplifiers. Then they've got an EABC80, which is a detector and audio preamp. Then it goes into the EL84 output tube. And this one comes with a EZ81 rectifier tube, which is also a first for me because, no, actually it's not a first, but it's rather rare in the ones I've been doing. They usually use Selenium rectifiers. The other thing that we'll notice is some of these components, some of these capacitors, you can't even see because of the dust that's accumulated on it, and also a lot of melted wax is visible. So this thing has been through a pretty tough life, judging from the condition that it's in. The dial cords are all in place, which is a good thing. So don't have to worry about too much about that. The other thing that we notice back here is that the tuning mechanism is actually a strange pulley system on top of the tuning capacitor for the AM, and that goes into the VHF can, which I think means this thing has probably got ferrite cores, ferrite rods that are used for tuning rather than capacitor tuning of the FM. The filter capacitors on the side, that's a multi-section capacitor there. And then on the underside, we see a selection, or rather a huge number of Hunt's capacitors, which I've been warned about and read a lot about. These capacitors are notoriously leaky, so it may mean I have to change every single capacitor that we see here, which is a pain in the butt, but hey, that's what we do this for. Right, so hopefully this attempt at recreating the first video of the series worked. Hopefully you've got an idea of what condition I found this radio in. So the next one in the series, which as I said I've already filmed, just going to edit it and put it up, actually takes us to the next step where the restoration itself starts, and I'll give you a hint, the first power-up happens in the next video. Right, look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.